Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. There are 3 ways that people are joining us today. There are a few people in the room today, and then people are either watching the live webcast or a video of the recording will be posted on the Big Ideas website. If you're watching the live webcast, go ahead and email bigideascontest@gmail.com right now, and Philip can send you the handouts that we're using today. So that's bigideascontest@gmail.com. And then you can also use that email address if you're watching live and you have questions throughout, and Philip will be monitoring the account and can feed those questions to me, and we can make sure they get answered. Okay, so the goal of today is to give judges an overview of the Big Ideas contest, to preview the proposals that you'll be looking at, what you should be expecting to read, and then to also give you some information about how to go to the website we'll be using to actually enter your scores. Okay, so first of all, what is Big Ideas? Big Ideas was launched in 2005. It was originally called Bears Breaking Boundaries, so you may have heard of that name. And it's designed to provide support to UC Berkeley students who have big ideas aimed at solving community, global, and university problems. And we need support in sort of a broad sense, so we offer obviously small grants to students, but we also have made some programmatic changes this year to make sure that students are supported through the proposal writing process and in the implementation process as well. This year, we have 7 competition categories. If you've happened to have judged in past years for us, you may know that we in the past have had many more categories. This year we have 7. You likely all know the specific category in which you're judging, but to give you a sense of the breadth of applications and projects that we review, the categories this year are global poverty alleviation, energy efficiency, emerging and neglected diseases, information technology for society, improving student life, creative expression for social justice, and scaling up. That last one, scaling up, is specifically for students who have won a Big Ideas grant in the past and are applying for additional funds this year to scale up their idea. The ones with the asterisks next to their names are ones that were open to students from other eligible UC campuses as well. Philip may know I don't know how many finalists actually don't include a UC Berkeley student. Philip, wait, sorry. That's okay.
I think out of the 41 final submissions, I think 3 involve off-campus.
Okay, so our rules for entry are that the proposal teams have to include at least one UC Berkeley or eligible campus graduate or undergraduate student. So the teams can be quite diverse. They can be comprised of all students. They can be comprised of mostly non-students, and you'll see that as you're reviewing your proposal. But I just wanted to point that out in case you noticed that no UC Berkeley students happen to be on one proposal. Don't be alarmed. And what have past winners done? I think we're all really proud of some of the things that the past winners have been able to accomplish, and they've been able to make huge impacts in a whole breadth of arenas. For example, some of our winners have engineered water purification systems, assisted with diagnosing malaria using cell phone apps so they can be used in remote villages, designed programs to redistribute excess consumable food waste to low-income communities in the East Bay community, and developed plans to improve Lower Sproul. So really diverse, really cover a large range of problems. And where do judges fit in this picture? So obviously, the contest wouldn't be possible without the support of our judges. Most importantly, you're helping us identify the most promising projects for funding and support. So based on the scores that you give the proposals, we'll decide who wins first place, who wins second place, and the grant amount they'll receive. And then you're also providing a small amount of written feedback to students. We also had a pre-proposal round, which I'll discuss a little bit more in a minute. But in that pre-proposal round, judges gave a little bit more written feedback, and I think all of the students were really good at expressing how helpful that feedback was. They use that feedback to craft their full proposals, but the feedback that you'll provide in this round will also help them think about how to make finishing touches on their projects or what to think about in implementation. So students really value that qualitative feedback and have found it really useful. Okay. So this year, the contest has undergone a few changes. We worked with Social Sector Solutions, which is a class in the business school, and they helped us think about ways that we might change the program to better support students. So in the past, students submitted a proposal, one proposal in the spring. They found out if they won or not. They were given their grant amount, and they implemented. This year, we separated the contest into two pieces. We had a full proposal round, or I'm sorry, a pre-proposal round in the fall semester, and this semester we're having a full proposal round. So in the fall, in November, they submitted a 3 to 4 page pre-proposal, and they sort of outlined their project idea and started to think about implementation, maybe started to think about sustainability, but it was sort of a rough outline of what they wanted to do and the impact they thought it would have. Judges looked at those proposals, looking mainly at how creative is the idea, does it seem like it will have a viable impact, and then selected finalists. So finalists were notified in January, and then they started a mentorship stage. So in order to increase support, we had student teams assigned with mentors if they wanted, and they've been working with mentors throughout the month of February to take into consideration the pre-proposed judge feedback and fine-tune their projects in preparation for their full proposal submission. And then now we're in the full proposal round. So the full proposals are actually due today at 5 p.m. So our finalists are busily finishing those up. Our full proposal judging will open on March 7th, so this week on Wednesday. And then we ask that you submit your scores and feedback by Tuesday, April 4th at noon. Okay, and then after that deadline, we have a number of other awards and sort of smaller contests that will be happening. We have a People's Choice Award that we'll be granting. Finalists will upload a video, like a 5-minute video to Unoodle, which is the website we're using, and I'll introduce you to that in a minute. So they'll upload a video, and anyone in the public will be able to vote on the video that they think represents the best funding opportunity. The winner of that will be granted the People's Choice Award, which is $10,000, an additional award on top of their potential category-specific award. There will also be a grand prize pitch day. So finalists from the first 6 categories that I talked about before, those are like emerging and neglected diseases, global poverty, the ones that aren't scaling up, who haven't won before, we'll have a separate grand prize pitch day, and then there'll be a scaling up grand prize pitch day for finalists who have won in the past. Up to 4 teams in each of those pitch days will be invited to come and pitch for this grand prize. So that's, for the grand prize pitch day, that's 4 teams across all of the categories. And they'll pitch in front of a panel of judges, and the judges will select a grand prize winner, and that team will get a $15,000 additional award on top of their category-specific award, and potentially on top of a People's Choice Award. Finalists will be notified of their awards on April 23rd, and then there'll be an award celebration on May 1st. So judges are absolutely invited to attend the award celebration. It'll be in the afternoon in Blum Hall. And also, if you're interested in judging for the grand prize and being part of the panel of judges, for sure let us know. You can email us or talk to us after. We'd love to have you. Are there any questions about all those logistics from anyone? Okay. So how are we narrowing winners down? We received 123 pre-proposals. From those, we selected 2 to 10 finalists in each category. And then, so those are the finalists who are submitting their full proposals today. And then from that pool, we'll select 1 to 6 winners in each category. Okay. So what are judges focusing on in this round? In the pre-proposal round, we primarily were concerned with the creativity of the idea that students were presenting, and also the viability to some extent. And now we think that we have a pool of really creative, innovative ideas, and we're primarily concerned with how viable the projects are. And we'll go through the judging scorecard and we'll sort of break down what each of these mean in a second, but just to give you a big picture of what we're looking for, project viability is the biggest piece. It's weighted as 30%. Research and market familiarity is the next biggest chunk. And then we have a few sort of smaller sections that we're interested in. For new entrants, we still have creativity weighted as 15%. If you're judging in a scaling up category, instead of creativity, we're going to ask you to look at the use of their previously awarded Big Ideas Grant. And depending on which category they're in, it'll be weighted as 15%. So that means that if you're a scaling up judge, you'll also have available to you their previous proposal. So the proposal that they submitted in a previous year that won. So in the full proposal, which I'll talk about in a second, they were asked to discuss, give a narrative account of how they used their funds, and you can sort of go back to their previous proposal and see if it matched up. So did they use their award as they proposed to do? An impact evaluation is weighted at 10%. We asked them to submit a budget and a budget narrative. That's another 10%. They were asked to give biographies, so team composition is another 5%. And then we're going to ask you for an overall score. So overall, do you think that this project looks like a valuable project or a good use of funds, something like that, an investment opportunity, in other words? And how does it rank comparatively to other proposals that you've looked at? And so every judge will look at all of the finalist proposals in each category. Does that make sense? So you will look at all the finalists in whatever category you're judging, so you should have some sense of maybe a ranking or relatively which ones are stronger and weaker, that sort of thing. Okay, so what did we ask students to submit? So this will be provided in the, when you go onto Unidoll, you'll be able to download this, so you'll have an electronic copy. Let me see if I can zoom in to make this, there we go. Okay, so we asked finalists to submit 6 to 7 sections. That potential extra 7th section is only for scaling up contestants. So most proposals that you will look at will have 6 sections, and we asked them to subdivide them in really clear ways, so you should be able to easily go through the proposal and see all of this information. So the first section is a project description and potential impact. So in the full proposal, they gave an outline of their project. In this section, we really wanted them to go into detail about their project and expand on what they provided us. So really lay out all the details of all of the components of their project and all of the details of the implementation procedure. So as a judge reading through this section, you should have a really clear idea of everything they're intending on doing and how they're intending on doing it. We specifically asked them to consider a few things. I'm going to go through this list. You'll see them again in the judging scorecard. But just so you have an idea of the things that we wanted them to specifically look at: ethical, culture, and legal considerations, marketing goals and strategies, if that applied to their project. We wanted them to look at similar initiatives and how their project may compare. Potential obstacles and how they're going to address them. Training and recruitment, if that applies to their project. Preliminary plans for ongoing growth. So their proposals across all these sections primarily only look at their first year of implementation. So June 2012 to June 2013. So most of what you'll be reading is about the first year. But we wanted them to sort of start thinking about the things that they'll be doing in upcoming years. So that's not a major focus of their proposal, but they should include some thoughts about how they might go to scale, whether or not they want to, how future years will look. And then we explicitly told students that it was totally fine if their projects changed to some extent between their pre-proposal and their full proposal. But if they had major changes in the conceptualization of their project, we asked them to address it. So as judges, you won't have access to their pre-proposal, but we wanted them to talk about huge changes to their project if they happened and why they decided to change directions. So you might see some of that as well. The second big section is a needs statement. We wanted them to talk about the problem that they're addressing, include facts and statistics and support for that need. Also include a description of the community and market needs, whether or not they expect buy-in from the community and market. Again, potential challenges. So we really wanted students to take a critical eye at their own project, and you should see that in their proposal, that they're really thinking about what could go wrong and how they might address those issues. And the extent to which they developed community partnerships. So in their pre-proposal, they may have thought about who they might want to partner with. At this stage, they should really have been reaching out to community partners and begin establishing those relationships. So that's something you would want to see. Does that make sense so far? Okay. We also asked them to include, an impact evaluation. So how are they planning on evaluating their project? We didn't ask them to include a full analysis plan or to develop instruments by which they might measure some of these things, but to basically sketch out how they might go about an evaluation. So you won't see necessarily a whole lot of details, but you should see a thoughtful plan that seems viable in terms of evaluation. A detailed timeline, so they should include major milestones for their project. The thing that you might be looking for in the timeline is how realistic it seems. Does it seem like their project is moving too slow, too fast? Does it seem reasonable? And then they have team biographies. So they'll list each of their key team members and they'll explain their relevant qualifications. So you'll want to be saying that the team has the capacity to do what they say they're going to do. So for example, if they're developing some sort of website or cell phone app, you'll obviously want to see that somewhere in their team biographies there's programming capacity or something like that. So you just want to make sure that they have the skills that they'll need to carry out their project. Hold on, I'm going to pass you a microphone first so our webcast viewers can. Go ahead.
How much weight would you give to, for example, having advisorship at this stage? So, financial advisorship, or do you focus primarily just on the team members themselves?
I think the focus, and Philip and Alexis can augment this, would be on the team members themselves. Many of them have advisor-type people who they've been talking to, whether it be like professors or they've had mentors, for example, so some of them might include their mentors in that team biographies. But we're primarily looking at the capacity of the students to carry it out. And we really envision the Big Ideas Contest as like student-driven work. So we want to see most of the capabilities within the student team. That doesn't mean that some students might not have consultants work on particular things or have, Alexis wants to add in. Go ahead.
Oh, no, we actually did stress that also, I think, in the pre-proposal round in terms of the feedback that many of the teams received, that we really did want it to demonstrate that it's student-led innovation. That's really what Big Ideas is about, but obviously that we encourage them to, whenever possible, consult with subject matter experts, whomever those might be.
Exactly. And in advising and office hours and those types of things, we've been telling students that if they've had an advisor, to mention it in the proposal. So you may see it. We just don't want their project to be an extension of someone else's work, but more, their own.
The judging should not take a big emphasis, like if they have a big name advisor,
no.
for example.
No. That shouldn't be a thing that sways you necessarily. Okay, and then as I said, for scaling up teams, they'll have an additional section where they give an account of how they've used previous funds. In most cases, this will just be a narrative account of how they use the funds. We haven't asked students in the past to do evaluations or think about evaluations. Some teams might be able to say how many people they served with funds or something like that, but by and large, it's just going to be an explanation of how they use their funds. And again, you'll be able to go back to their previous winning proposal and sort of match these sections up. And then our last section is a budget and a budget narrative. So we provided teams with a budget spreadsheet, which I am scrolling to, that looks like this. So you should all see this spreadsheet filled out. So we asked them to include line items of all of their expenses. So you should be able to look at their project proposal and make sure all of their expenses are there, first of all. And then there's also this sort of section that asks for cost details, where they can include calculations or more information about why they chose particular supplies, for example. So the budget spreadsheet should give you enough information to judge whether or not they're realistically considering the cost and have some understanding of how they calculated their costs. but we also ask them to submit a one-page budget narrative where they further explain their rationale. In the pre-proposal round, students submitted this budget template, but it was somewhat difficult for judges to tell whether or not they had made good decisions about particular things. So we wanted them to be really explicit about how they calculated the costs and why they chose certain products over others, for example. Does that make sense? So the first part of this budget spreadsheet is projected expenses. The second part is projected revenue. So the average Big Ideas category-specific award is $5,000, but it can vary considerably depending on the specific category. So we've been telling students that the average award is about $5,000, but many projects exceed that. Their budgets exceed that by a lot. So we've been advising students that if their budget exceeds that by a large margin, to think about other grants that they might apply to, what in-kind donations they could get, things like that, other sources of revenue. So if you notice that their projected expenses far exceed $5,000, roughly, then you would also want to see some initial thoughts about what other revenue they could acquire. And that information would go in the revenue section, and then there's a funding gap section. Okay, so the full proposal is, in total, including all of these sections, the budget and the budget narrative, is 15 pages maximum. And then we also allow students to submit 5 pages of appendices that could include anything they wanted. It might include survey instruments they've developed. It might include additional information on partners. It could be anything. So the maximum amount of pages you should be seeing is 20 pages, but references aren't included in that. So they could have a reference page that might be longer, but we're hoping that that doesn't require a lot of effort for you guys to look at. So that raises the question, what if you get a proposal that's longer than 15 pages of proposal and 5 pages of appendix? And the answer to that is that we do not expect you to read more than 20 pages. So if you happen to get a proposal that's longer, we ask you only to read 15 pages of proposal, 5 pages of appendices, and judge the proposal based on what you have read in that limit. So we do not want to burden you with additional work if students didn't follow the guidelines. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on anything about what you'll be reading? Okay. So now we're going to move on to how you actually go about scoring. So all this information is in this quick guide to using UNoodle handout. So you'll be able to reference it at any time. We think it's pretty straightforward, but we wanted to make sure that we give you an introduction to it because it can be sort of tricky to get in there and start judging. So the first thing that will happen is that you'll receive an email inviting you to be a judge. I believe that's happening today?
Today or tomorrow.
Today or tomorrow, Alexa says. So soon you will be receiving this email. The email will be from UNoodle, and it'll include this link that says, to accept your invitation, follow the secure link below. And once you follow that, you'll be able to sign into UNoodle. If you do not already have a UNoodle account, you can create one using the leftmost part of the screen. If you already have a UNoodle account, you can sign in at this point. The only thing that's important to remember is to use the email that we use to email you, because that's how we'll connect you to the proposals. So once you log in, you'll be taken to this Judge Your Entries page. This overview section will contain helpful documents for you. So it'll contain the full proposal guidelines that I just showed you, so you'll be able to reference those. And then I think we're also putting up these FAQ documents, potentially. So it'll contain information. There's also a link to our email right there. And then the second section is the entry overview. So that'll include all of the proposals that you've been assigned to judge. And in order to judge them, you just click the Judge Now link next to them. Makes sense. And you can do them in any order. It doesn't matter. But to start judging, you'll click Judge Now. At that point, you'll be taken to the judging scorecard. At the top, you'll be able to see the team name, their email, and then 2 really important things, their entry form data and their proposal file. So when students submit their full proposal, they have a web form that they fill out, And it includes things like, their team name, a 50-word description, some basic information. Sometimes that entry form data can contain helpful information for you. So we ask you to sort of open it, browse it. It can also help you orient yourself before you dive into the proposal. I think it's really helpful. So make sure to view the entry form data. And then there should be one PDF file that'll include their full proposal, those 20 pages. So you'll be able to open that and read through it. And then once you're done reading through it, you'll be able to score their full proposal. So there are 8 Likert scale questions. You'll answer them by simply dragging this knob over to a number. It doesn't explicitly say it, but 1 means poor, 5 means strong. And you'll go through and answer all of the questions. Hopefully they'll be pretty straightforward. So creativity, how creative was the project? The only tricky thing I think is there are 2 sections for project viability. That's mainly because UNoodle has a limit on how many characters we can put in for each Likert question, so we had to split it up. But each project viability piece asks you about specific components of project viability, if that makes sense. So you'll just read the text next to it to understand what exactly you're supposed to be looking at. So for the first one, proposal reflects all relevant aspects of development and implementation. It has considered X, Y, and Z. And then for the next project viability, the team has considered some other set of things. So they're getting at the same construct, but they're 2 different questions. And then research and market familiarity, evaluation plan, team composition, budget and budget narrative. We already went through those. And these should map on really well to what the sections that you're reading. It should be pretty easy to understand where you need to go in the proposal to answer these questions. And then again, you'll have this overall score. So overall, this proposal compares favorably. And then there's just one feedback question, and we ask you to talk about what you thought was strong about the idea and the proposal, and also areas for improvement. And again, teams have responded really well to this feedback and thought it was really helpful. So I encourage you to say as much as possible, knowing that the teams will really take it seriously. And then you'll notice there's a Likert scale right here too for the feedback question. Totally ignore it. There's no way in UNoodle for us to get around that. If we have a feedback question, they put in that scale, just leave it at 1, absolutely ignore. And then once you're done, you'll be able to save your scores. Also, you don't have to submit all of your feedback at once. If you start the form and then decide that you want to come back to it, you can save scores. It'll save your progress, and you can come back. You can also submit it all and then have a change of heart and want to go back and change scores. That's fine. So it's totally editable up until the deadline, at which case we'll take whatever information you've given us and use that. Okay, are there questions about UNoodle in particular? Okay. And then obviously a huge thank you to everyone who's judging. We couldn't do the Big Ideas contest without you, and your feedback is hugely, hugely helpful. So thank you. And again, all of the documents and all this information will be available to everyone after today once you start judging. And if you have any questions at all, you can contact us. Our contact information is on the FAQ, and I think you also all have it. But bigideas@berkeley.edu and the phone number.
Is there any chance that we could see written feedback from previous years just to get an idea of what has typically been done?
Yeah, in previous years we haven't had a structured judging system, but we have examples from the pre-proposal that we can send out to sort of understand what sort of qualitative feedback judges have provided.
Okay. And if I understand, I probably can't see from my own, but even if I could see the feedback from another, just to give an idea of the sort of...
Yeah, I think we made an example for the pre-proposal judges, so we could just, it's in the handbook.
That'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts? Okay, thank you so much.